Okay, is it start? I guess it's recording. Okay, so today we're going to use the quadratic formula, and it is another method to find the x's, which are your x-intercepts, which are your zeros. It does the same thing that factoring does, but sometimes not all of your equations factor, and so you need another method. And so quadratic formula would work on everything that you needed it to work on. So the first thing is your equation must be in standard form, which is, whoops, that's not going to work. There we go. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Your a, your b, and your c are generally numbers. And then you're going to find out more information to fit into the formula, and we'll go over that in just a second. And you're going to work it out, perform all the operations, and you're going to simplify the radical. That's what we've been working on, and then do some reducing. And we'll work on that too. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's get started. So here is the quadratic formula. It looks scary, but it's not that bad. You'll get used to it, and I think you'll even probably memorize it. So the first question, it's not in standard form. The reason it's not in standard form is the a, the b, and the c aren't all on the left-hand side or on one side, and you don't have a 0 here. So we need to move the 14 over and rewrite it. And now it's in standard form. So if you want to, you can put a 1 there if it makes you feel better. Your a, remember your standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So your a comes before the x squared, that's 1. Your b is before the x, that's 5. Your c is the number that doesn't have a variable, it's generally last, and so that's negative 14. So, b squared,
Jasmine, Bonilla, your ride is waiting for you at the front of the building.
b squared is 25. b squared will never be negative, because when you square even a negative number, it's positive. Then you try to figure out what 4 times a times c is, because these are all things, all different terms or parts of the quadratic formula, so it's handy to have them figured out. So 4 times, here's your a, 1 times negative 14 is, oh, I have this one wrong here. What's that, negative 56? Is that right? I think that's right. Okay, and then 2 times a, which is 1, is 2. Okay, so now we're ready to just plug these in. So if you do a little bit of preliminary work, you can plug it in. I'm going to write the quadratic formula a little bit bigger. I would suggest that you write it at least the first couple of times you do the quadratic formula, and then if you get better at it, you may not need to write it the whole time. Okay, so negative b, if b is 5, negative b would be the opposite sign of 5, so it would be negative 5 plus or minus. So now we need to find b squared, which is 25, minus 4ac, which is negative 56. And yes, I know we have a double there, but you just got to be careful. Maybe in a minute you can fix it to be a positive. And then you have divided by 2. So you have negative 5 plus or minus. That does become a positive. When you have a minus a negative, it changes to a positive. So you have 81, 25 and 56 is 81 over 2. So then you have negative 5 plus or minus 9. The square root of 81 is 9 over 2. And this right here is used to simplify your radical, but I kind of use it like we didn't need to simplify our radical here. It was just a 9. I just kind of use it for some scratch work. So we're going to do negative 5 plus 9 over 2, and we're going to do negative 5 minus 9 over 2. Remember, when you have a parabola many times, you have two answers. You're looking for where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So you have 4 divided by 2, which is 2, and you have negative 14 divided by 2, which is negative 7. So x equals 2 and x equals negative 7. Make sure you put x equals. Okay? Okay, so that's just kind of a simple one. Let's do another one. You want me to do number 2? Okay. So we'll do number 3. We'll skip to that one. Maybe? Okay. So this one, well, that one looks a little funny. So we need to make it look like it's in standard form. So that means everything needs to be on one side, and it needs to be set equal to 0. 36x squared minus 49 equals 0. Well, we're going to have to find the a, the b, and the c. So technically, you have 0 x's, okay? You don't have to write that if you don't want to, but I wanted to point it out to you kind of now what's going on. Okay, so our a is 36. There's your a. Our b, our b is 0. And our c is negative 49. Well, b squared, that's 0 squared, that's still a 0. 4 times 36 times negative 49 is, I have to reach for your calculator, we can't do that one in our head, is negative 7,056, and don't worry, it's all going to work out. And then 2 times 36 is 72. Okay, so now we're ready to use the quadratic formula. I'm going to write the quadratic formula here. It's at the top of your page, maybe. I can't remember if it's up there or not. Okay, so we want negative b, which is still 0. We kind of looked out on this one, didn't we? And then b squared is 0. B squared is 0 right there, minus a negative 7,056. You have to be really careful there. The minus comes from the formula, and then sometimes your 4ac is negative. So sometimes you have two negatives there. If you don't understand, remember that minus came from the formula, and then this negative came from the negative 7,056. And we'll take care of that in just a second. So then x is 0 plus or minus, so let's take care of those double negatives. So a 0 plus 7,056 is just 7,056 over 72. Now, when you get a big number, so we can kind of forget the 0, but you don't want to forget the plus or minus, because that's going to give you your two answers, or your two x-intercepts. When you have a huge number, don't go into panic mode. What you need to do is reach for your calculator and see if that's a perfect square. That would be the first thing to do, because 9 times out of 10, it's already a perfect square. So is 7,056 a perfect square? Yes, it is. It's 84. Okay, so we're not going to really use this to simplify the radical. What we're using it for is to say a positive 84 divided by 72 and a negative 84 divided by 72. And what will 84, and we have to reduce it. See, this asks for reduced solutions. So what will 84 and 72 both divide by? So you might have to think, you might have to use your calculator a little bit, but they'll both divide by 12. So when you divide them both by 12, you get 7/6. And then you get a negative 7/6. So your answer is, or negative 7/6. And sometimes your teacher would it probably accept this as an answer? So you'll just have to check with your teacher how they want you to write it. I tend to accept both. So there's one, kind of a little, maybe a special case where you have, it's actually a difference of 2 squares back when we factored. Okay, so let's look at number 4. Okay, number 4 is already in standard form, so we don't have to do anything to this one. It's all on one side. It's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 1. Equals 0. So our a is 3, our b is 5, our c is 1. So 5 squared is 25. 4 times 3 times 1 is 12. And 2 times 3 is 6. So we're ready to do our quadratic formula. AC over 2A. Okay, B is 5, so negative B would be negative 5. B squared is 25. There it is right there. It's never negative. If you get a negative number for B squared, you did something wrong. Probably just a silly mistake, so go back and check it. Because you can't ever get, when you square something, you never get a negative number. 4AC is 12 over 6. So next, we're going to see what's going on inside our radical sign. 25 minus 12 is 13 over 6. So you take your square root of 13 over here. We're actually going to use this box for what it's meant for. And you start thinking, how can you simplify 13? Well, 13 only has 13 and 1. It's a prime number. So there's really nothing we can do to that square root of 13. It's going to have to stay a square root of 13. So this is, I really don't even know why I rewrote this just now, but I did. Okay, so this is our answer. And it's really 2 answers. You really have one of each kind. Sometimes on a multiple choice test, you'll see it written, they'll write it both ways. One with the plus, and one with the minus. I'm not too picky. I will take, either that or that. Okay? Okay, so that kind of sums that up and how to use the quadratic formula to find your x-intercepts when you have a quadratic. Go.